So, Punya, welcome. And how did Osho come into your life? And what happens next?
Next.
Next.
Yeah, I was talking to Abiru the other day, and then I said, "Oh, if you want to know, you can read my book. I can show
Great.
it to you.
Please,
It's
please.
called On the Edge."
On the edge. Wow.
And it turned out very, very big, very, 440 pages.
Wow.
So it came out about 8 years ago already. And it was one of the first books written by a sannyasin who wasn't an important sannyasin, who wasn't close to Osho or who had, or where Osho had asked them to write. I just wrote because I used to meet friends like you, and they would ask me about stories from the old days, and then we would spend time, and then I felt like, oh, why don't I write them down? And so that's how it started. And of course, it took many years because, I'm not a writer professionally. And I felt like, who am I to write a book, like all these fears, And then there was Veena, who was always pushing me, come, finish. No, it's good, keep going. And the funny thing is that I had many jobs in the communes, and so I could see the others or what was happening. I could see from many corners. And for instance, on the ranch, I was in the press office, and there was a Twinkie. So I knew, like Wild Wild Country, all that stuff I knew because I would read the papers. And so I could write also about the ranch. I could write, like we made this. And of course, I was very proud that we managed to build all these buildings,
Yes.
And so that's how it came about, this book. And then in between, I wrote more in the present, which was then like the year 2002. That's when I finished the last bit.
We ask you to talk, just to make a long story short. Okay,
Yes.
just a little.
Yeah, that, like a long story short, it was very, very complicated. The story, how I met Osho, is very complicated, lots of bits.
Okay.
So yesterday I was thinking about my life before Osho and my life in general. And then I realized how, you can imagine your life, little blobs here, you do this. And then I wanted to become an artist and a dancer and a photographer. So all things which in the end then didn't work out. But there was, like some people, they went to India in search of a master. That wasn't me. It was more like a coincidence. Or then suddenly I had this picture of me like a magnet, and Osho was a magnet. So I was kind of a bit looking about. I knew that there was something underneath things, like moon in Scorpio. They always turn things underneath, they want to see underneath the stone. And so I knew there was something underneath. And then suddenly when then Osho, I came close to Osho, it just suddenly went like, tick. I can even hear it like tick, the two metals coming together. And and then the rest is history. So the story was, as I said, I was living, some people also, they were suicidal, or they were they had big problems. Actually, my life was going so beautifully that actually I felt like, oh my God, this is dangerous, because I had this very lovely Portuguese boyfriend. I had a job, very well paid. I had it half part-time I could do. The other part-time I was studying biology because I wanted to know what life is. That's why I studied biology. I was doing yoga, like this breathing exercises, lots of friends, going out, you know, life in Milan, and everything was full. Maybe I even had a car, I don't remember. But, you know, life was really good. And then it happened, this boyfriend, he was a graphic designer, and he made a job for the Air India. There was the manager of Air India had just arrived, and he was very modern, very kind of a bit hippie, but he was big, solid man with wife and 2 children. And we helped them a little bit to find the restaurants. And, you know, when they had just arrived. And so with this friendship, then my boyfriend, he did a job for his office, which then in the end they didn't do. So instead of giving him money, they gave him a ticket. But him being Portuguese with the Goa story, so he was not allowed in India. So the ticket went to me. So there I have a free ticket to go to India, you know, and which somewhere I always wanted to go to India, you know, one of those things. Now that summer, because it was something I had totally forgotten, our neighbor on the same level, we were friends with them, and suddenly out of their door comes a guy wearing orange with a mala. And so I ran up to, you know, like they were friends. So I felt confident enough that I went up to him. I took this mala in my hand. I looked at the picture, and there was the same man on both sides, like an old mala, you know. And then I said, but who is this? Then he says, my master. And then I said, master, And where does he live? In India. And then I felt like, India, you know, like in those days, a journey to India would cost you like a whole salary for a whole month or more. Like the prices were very expensive. So to India, like, forget it, you know. And then it happened with this job, with this Air India people come, you know, like real magical, like the things just came, and there I had this ticket. So I started packing up, and this Air India man, later he became sannyasin as well. And they went to that's another story. But so he gave me, and then you go to Jabalpur, and then you go, and I could stay in the house of the wife's family. So I was there, not in a hotel, but in somebody's family. So I really had the feeling of how it is to live in India, in Colaba, in Bombay. And then just when I was packing, and there was a phone call, and some guy gave me the address of the this guru. And so I wrote it down, and I remember Bhagwan, I wrote something very funny, but the address was correct. And then I said, okay, this I will also go and visit eventually. First, I go and travel in India, which was good, because otherwise I would never have done the journey. No Taj Mahal or anything you would have seen.
Just
so I did that first. Something went wrong with the ticket. I lost my flight, or something very strange happened. And so I had extra days. And then I said, oh, let's go and check out this guru. And then I went there, and then something went wrong during the day, and Lakshmi was there, was in a flat, Pedder Road.
Was it in Bombay?
Bombay.
Woodland,
yeah.
Okay.
Taxi brought me there. And then I went upstairs, first floor. Then Lakshmi was at the desk. And then she asked me where I coming from Italy. So she called Lalita, who was a friend of Diksha. Lalita come and introduce this woman to Osho Bhagwan. And then actually then Diksha came because she was more the one who was doing the talking. And so she told me, yeah, on tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you come to Dynamic on the beach. And and then in the evening, there was also a discourse. But because I made a mistake with the buses, I didn't manage to get to the discourse. It was locked already and all the shoes were outside, but I was locked out. So next morning I go to Dynamic on the beach. I do my Dynamic and I felt like, yes, this is it. I knew this was the right thing. I have found it. Like you say, Eureka. Eureka.
Yes,
That was
yes.
it, the Dynamic. And then Osho I
morning.
saw in the evenings. And then there was the camp was coming up in Mount Abu.
What year was it?
74.
74.
It was January 74.
Okay.
And Osho had asked, I had like a darshan in Osho's room, which was like his room, in bed and a chair. And I went in with Diksha first time. And I was like a second, kind of sitting a bit behind. And then Osho asked me, take sannyas. And then I said, oh, maybe after the camp, But then in the end, I couldn't wait for the camp, In the meantime, I had to call my office and my boyfriend. Oh, I have amoebic dysentery. I cannot travel, like I made it up so that I could stay 1 more month until I had the ticket to go back. And so just like before we drove away by train to Mount Abu, I asked for sannyas. And I remember just this morning, I remember that when I went in, it was, I don't remember if it was in the morning or in the afternoon. And I just started crying and cry, but not just crying like this, really like sobbing, like this. And then Osho put on my mala. And then I thought, oh, I wonder how much it costs. And then he gave me the name. Yoga, Punya, Punya, virtue, and yoga is union. And then virtue, I didn't like the name virtue, like in Latin, you learn virtus, it's like so moralistic. I didn't like it. And then he just said, virtue is opposite of sin. So whatever that, for me, virtue means like to be aware. Actually, that's when you're virtuous, when you're aware as much as possible. So I think that's like the message. Then so I was crying and crying. And then many years later in Pune, there was a man, Indian man, and he also had come up to Osho, and he was the same, just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And he also got the mala and the name. And then Osho said, oh, he's coming from the heart, or this is coming from the heart. And then I understood, because I always felt a bit embarrassed to have been there in darshan and just crying like this, like a child, like, ooh. So that was my darshan. And then we went to Mount Abu. And then, how to say, for me, it was always like, I did everything 100%. you know, like dynamic and everything. And it was, if I think my whole life, I always did everything 100%. I think, at least it feels for me like not questioning too much. I mean, you know, do jump 10 minutes. There was this tratak in the evening. We would have to jump up and down and look into Osho's eyes, and he would go like this. And you jump and you jump and you jump and you jump and you jump, and then the body goes by itself.
Wow.
And it would actually also be interesting to talk about how kind of the dynamic evolved.
Yes.
And that, I feel it's wonderful to see how Osho was experimenting with things. You know, like in the beginning, there was, like in Mount Abu, there was deep breathing, you know, like we have now. And then the catharsis. And then there was just shouting who, no jumping, just who. And that is actually also very good in case you, for some reason, there's something wrong with your legs and you cannot do the jumping, just to do the who really from the voice. That's also very powerful. And then if I'm not 100% sure, but I think that afterwards we would lie down. And then I think when we came to Punya, slowly, the who was combined with the jumping, and then the stop, which Osho stole from Gurdjieff, you know, which is a great, brilliant idea.
Brilliant idea.
So the freezing. So he experimented, you know, he changed things. So that was also interesting to see. And for instance, also the Kundalini, he had asked a few of us to do it at home by ourselves, the shaking. And then after 3 weeks, we would have to come, and we probably he wouldn't ask much. He would just look at you if it worked or not. And so also the Kundalini was devised with experimentation, trying out. So it wasn't like one morning he wakes up and says, oh, let's do this. You know, it was really like and tried out on different people. And so that's how these meditations came about.
That's so beautiful. That's so...
You know, Shailendra, Osho's brother, told us something about that. Also, about the creation of dynamic. And he says, standing on the fourth stage started because there was not enough room for people to lie down, to be possible to everyone to fit on the room.
The room, yeah, could also be. It was very, very crowded, there. Because in winter we couldn't do outside. It was too cold. So we were in this hall, which was, it had like mattresses on the floor, on the ground, on the floor. And it was probably in this hotel. It was a hotel. It was probably the dining room or something like that. So it wasn't very big.
Wow. Beautiful. The first steps of this great and big movement that he does.
Punya, could you tell us a little about your life as a sannyasi since early days? After Mount Abu, how did it evolve? Like Pune 1, ranch, anything you want to tell us?
First, I went, after Mount Abu, I went back to my job wearing orange and a mala. And then after 3 months, my colleagues said, oh, you really like this color. And then the mala, the one girl, you know, in Italy, when you're a widow, you have a photo of your dead husband And sometimes they would wear it on a brooch. And so she said, Osho reminds her of death because of that. Or on the tombs in Italy, you would have like a photo of the dead person. A bit, it looks very much like a mala, also the shape of it, it was like that. And
Yes.
so then I felt like, well, it is a bit of a death. You know, the sannyas, like everything is going. And then, of course, suddenly I felt like, oh, I'm fed up with always cooking for friends. You know, so like I didn't need to have all this ego thing because I was a good cook. And so all these friends started leaving, my boyfriend started leaving, and then suddenly new people came. So the orange was wearing orange, and the sannyas was like renewing my surroundings also without me having to do anything. You know, it was just, I stopped feeling like cooking. So many friends, they didn't come anymore because I wasn't cooking. And as it goes. And so then life just, and then after 6 months, I went back, and then Osho gave me the name for a center. So my little flat became a center. And then, you know, I emptied one room, which then became the meditation room. And then my boyfriend also left, so I was living in the living room. Then there is one thing which I really feel a bit guilty about having done, just because one man, he said, yeah, don't be attached to your books and belongings. Let's just go to Pura, you know, overland, which we did, you know, and then me, stupid me, you know, I followed that. And then I didn't. I left the flat to a girl who was non-sannyasi, but I didn't take care that the center went on. So when I arrived in Pune, Osho wasn't very pleased with that. And so afterwards, I ran some other centers, one in Geneva, which had previously, Diksha had that center before. I took it on because she wanted to go to Pune. And there, when I left Geneva, I made sure that it would go on. So I felt like I had, I hadn't done the right thing, just to do my own thing, just to go and leave the center like that, you know, like being irresponsible. It wasn't
rebel.
Yeah, I wanted to prove to that man that, yes, of course, I can drop everything, you know, like, you know, how women are stupid. No,
just one question. You said you
always learning.
You said you had a center at in the flat. How about the neighbors?
Oh, we used to go. This was a major operation. On a Sunday, we would organize cars, like with phone calls, and then you pick up so and so, and then we would go out in the woods. Then we had a little stereo with the cassette, and we would do dynamic in the woods. And then afterwards, we had breakfast together. Other meditations I did, like Devavani and things like that, we could do in the house. But it was just a few people, like maybe 4 or 5 people at the same time. Like there was no sannyasins. Like the guy who gave me, who had the mala, who gave me the address. There was him in Milan, 1 million people at the time. Then there was this guy who wanted me to travel with him overland. That was all the sannyasins in Milan. So it was all like building up the clientele, you know, like.
Yes.
And the same in Geneva later. We were like Diksha and Lalita, they went to Pune, and there was me and a few hippies. And they were also in Pune. So practically we were just two sannyasins there. And then we would do dynamic there. We did dynamic every day before work. I would go there, put on the speakers and everything. And that was a dojo above a big shop, which wasn't open at that time yet. And so we could make noise, loud, dynamic,
Yes.
in this beautiful dojo. Wonderful. And so the people would come being attracted, or sometimes I would put flyers, I think, and then they would do dynamic, and then they go to Pune. Then we had to make more clients, you know.
Yes.
You had to make more and more publicity. They would always go to Pune.
Go to Pune. Sure.
And then eventually they would come back and you know, help out, and so it was good.
I think this place in Geneva was a kind of part of the magnet, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if the center was there already. Maybe.
Wow. And how is today? You tell us, you want to tell about today.
Today?
Nowadays, how is Osho in your life? And,
yeah. And I was thinking, like, Osho is becoming much more subtle. Like, I don't have any Osho pictures in my office. I have his box he had given to me. This box. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
And
yes.
there is hairs or beard in it. So this I have on the desk, but sometimes when I think of Osho, I actually feel him right here with his, you know, like with a big grin, you know, like I feel him sometimes like real here. And on the other hand, I feel like always more subtle, more invisible. And I don't know, I feel there is maybe is more this freedom, or I don't really know how to explain, but it's like I rarely think of Osho as a person. Of course, I read Osho's texts. We have Osho News, you know, but he is becoming very abstract in a way. And I don't know, sometimes when you think the speed of light, I don't know, can you imagine the speed of light? I imagine like this. So that's how I feel Osho. Osho, very like a vibration, you know, like atoms like going like this. That's how I feel. And let's say the path or the meditation for me is to, as much as possible, to be aware of this moment. Like now, you know, there is the outside, there is you guys, me sitting here, me, this voice coming out. Of course, I get lost, you know, but I try to always kind of come back again during the day. That's kind of what it's like. My little discipline would be like this, or when I'm with somebody and there is a confrontation, just see, how do I feel? Why do I feel like this? You know, kind of coming back to myself. So that's like my little meditation, or I don't know.
How about Osho News? That was about this project. How did it start?
Yeah, it started, I say, almost like 18 years ago, really long time ago. I was living in Scotland, and somebody down south, Vivek, we have this woman, Phoebe, who does our horoscope. Her husband I don't know how he contacted me and said, listen, Manisha is coming and from Australia and doing this workshop. People need to know about it. And then my hobby was doing websites. And then I figured out that one page comes up when you write Osho UK. And so I contacted this man and he gave me permission to use a page. So I started putting the events in there. And then I thought, let's also put the addresses where people can where people can meditate, because official places to meditate, some are official, but nothing is happening there. And there are some unofficial, and they have meditations every day. So I made a list of that, connecting, and then after a while, Vina, she says, oh, maybe I could write an article here and there, and maybe interviews, talk about artists and events, talk about events before and afterwards and so on. And so that went on. We had then our domain name eventually, oshoinuk.com, which still exists, but now it's a new design and more simple, no more like a magazine like we had. Mm-hmm. And then I moved to Greece, and then Vina was traveling to China often, and she didn't have much energy. And I felt that from Greece doing something about the UK alone didn't feel right. And so I looked, oshonews.com was available. Said, oh, well, that's the invitation. And so I started making something similar, of course, with lots of ideas which were from Vina. Of course, I want to give her credit for that. And so I started that. And after short, Bhagwati, who works for, she writes for Viha Connection, she asked if she can join. So we joined. So we worked together for more than 10 years. And so the whole thing grew bigger and bigger. And so now it's like it's not that I have Osho News. It's more like Osho News has me. Like Osho News has now its own life. It's like its own thing. And people are sending in articles, like sometimes I don't hardly have anything. Sometimes I go and ask, oh, these paintings are beautiful. What if we did something? Some people, they need to be invited. Or sometimes I know, why don't you write about your life? And many say, oh. So sometimes it's me asking, but many times people send. So that's beautiful. So practically, I could sit here and things just come without me having to think, oh, what do we do this month? So, things just come like that. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had ideas like that we wanted to talk about your videos. So that will come eventually. Yes. So I put like a little flea in people's ears. Mm-hmm. And then maybe when they have time, they write it.
Sure. Like Punya, doing these stories com Osho, I feel like I'm working in Pune. I'm working for Osho. Divya also feels the same. So it's just great. We don't get any money out of it. It's just like, how do they call it? Sabha is working meditation, something like that. Yeah?
Sadhana.
Yes, our sadhana. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. Just the reward is doing, not the outcome. It's just doing the reward.
Yeah, it just goes by itself. Yeah.
Yes. Great, beautiful.
And one thing I also learned that nowadays I just do things I enjoy doing. There were some things I had prepared with my mind. Oh, this would be nice to have, but I never really enjoyed doing it. So now I said, we don't do that anymore. You know, like I do just what I enjoy, like doing. You know, some days I feel like working on this, I do that. Some days I don't feel like working, I do something else. Yeah. Just going with the flow.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Not to force myself, because I'm a slave driver. I'm very good at forcing myself, you know, like keep running, keep doing, you know, like Swiss upbringing, you know, like.
I understand. I'm too.
And now I'm old enough. I can say I can just float.
maybe I can get there someday.
I have some years to go to suffer.
Yes, just let the years go.
Punya, yesterday we were chatting and you told me a beautiful story about music in Corfu and some events there. Could you share a little about that? Something like that.
We were talking about Peter McKenna.
Yes.
Yeah. I think but for 5 years or so, he came every summer to give workshops at Alexis Zorba's. And at that time, I was organizing the music for the Buddha Hall. We had a band for a while, and then in summer, there were all these musicians coming, and then I thought, oh, let them engage and ask them if they want to play in Buddha Hall, and nobody ever said no. So it was also in like a calendar. We had this man comes then, and he will play then, and so one night, it was Peter McKenna's time. He was maybe just 2 weeks a year he was there. So it was just that one Saturday. And then after the discourse, so he would sing in the beginning before discourse and then afterwards. And then there was like an extra, like there was this music group. And it had never happened before. There were a lot of people in Arillas because Deva Premal and Miten, they had these workshops, and those workshops were like 250 people in one go. They had a big place in the open. So all these people were also there. So the Buddha Hall was really full. So Peter McKenna was singing these, the songs, the sun behind the sun, the sun, and Step into the Fire, all these old songs. And him playing, there was probably somebody on the djembe. And we were all dancing, and the energy was, you could feel like the roof was lifting. And there were many sannyasins from Pune one there because they were there because of Deva Premal's workshop. They came every year. And then we looked at each other's eyes and said, and we had this every night in Buddha Hall, like you feel like I don't know, you just fly. Yeah, really, you fly. Yeah. And this was there just with this music and his beautiful voice. He had such a beautiful voice. Yeah.
Wow,
yes.
wow.
You know, I told you yesterday, I have been involved in some meditation centers in Brazil throughout time, since I took sannyas. Maybe 3 or 4 meditation centers here where I live, in Porto Alegre, or in São Paulo even, or north of Brazil. And I used to call musicians and form bands to play.
Yeah.
And the last one, especially for some years ago, no one knew those songs. I was to call
really?
people. Yes, I was to call people. They are new, and they teach them the songs. I had it written and the chords, everything. And well, my wife is a musician. She helps. Yeah, she's a singer. And people came together, and they all were stoned for about 2-3 weeks after that. We get together, and people were just blissed out. You know, it's amazing. All the time it happens. So for me, these songs are carried with Osho's energy very strongly.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
get a bunch of people, you sing them, Osho is there. It's amazing. This is
Yeah,
my
that's right.
experience.
Yeah.
It's not mental, you know? It's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
experience.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. There are places where you can look them up, like sanyas.wiki. They
Yes,
have all the
Yes.
songs and
I
also the
know.
pieces.
I
Yeah.
downloaded 900 songs from that.
Mhm.
So I'm doing a big research on those songs.
Yeah.
Beautiful ones. Yes,
Mhm.
just 2 days ago, I was like, as you said, goosebumps. Yeah. Because I found one Indian song, Urdu, was the language. Then I found that Osho explaining the meaning of the words and saying that English words fall short to Urdu language because it comes from the heart. It's very beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I want to do something with that, you know, again. It's a
Beautiful.
new project. Maybe comes. Tell
But
us a little about
I
singing for
remember
you.
there, I used to play percussion. This all too has to do with Nivedano, because on drive-by, he always used to give his instruments. He used to play on the drum, or maybe not the big surdo he used to play. But to us, sometimes he would give a snare, and of course it was very difficult. So to me, once he gave me a cabasa, and then I just loved the sound I was playing, and then he really liked the way I was playing. And so for many months, it seemed I was playing. It was me there, and then Rupesh and Nivedano, the three of us. And then Osho would always look at Rupesh going like this. And I was going faster and faster and faster. And then afterwards, like when you say you faint, you see black. But there I would faint and you see white. Like, you don't know where you are. Like, just amazing. And then he would drive on. So that was like my drug, was then play this.
Yes,
It
I
was
can
wonderful.
imagine. I can imagine.
And then in Pune too, I felt like, oh, maybe I can play at birthday parties, and then in the end I played at some music groups, and at the Sufi dance, and at Sanya's celebrations. Mostly Milarepa was playing. And I just had this picture when you were talking about being stoned, about singing, that there was the Sanya celebration at some point was on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning. I thought Saturday morning. And then afterwards, us musicians, I just still have this picture of Milarepa sitting on the Zen wall, just like this, like totally just spaced out. And I think that after that, because nobody could go back to work, they moved it to the evening. The Sanya celebration was no more in the morning, but in the evening. Because then in the evening you go to bed, and then next day you go back to work, Because everybody after the Sanya celebration, it was like, and I'm sure it was the music and the songs which would make that.
Ikitero yorokobi.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I want you to tell you a funny story about the enlightened drum.
So there was this, if I think of this drum, now when we moved to England, this house is very small, and I felt like I couldn't really, there was not really place here because it's quite a big, big drum. And so I left it with another musician in Corfu. She has a very beautiful house. So she's now looking after it. And now that I talk about it, I regret it a little bit. I feel like homesick for it. And this was a drum made of wood on the side, about this big, beautiful sound, very strong, hollow. And with the wood, it was really very full, the sound. And I learned how to play the surdo, like this. I just look how the boys are doing it, and then I do. And then there were many events, like in workshops, that they would ask for musicians to come, or sometimes somebody dies, we go to the burning ghats, and I was playing the drum. So I was always looking after this drum. Like after the burning ghats, I would wash it or like clean it, and it was my favorite drum. And then many years pass, and then Nivedano told me that he was playing with that drum the 3 beats. And then one day Osho says, yeah, I have it in my book. I put the piece where Osho says something like, yeah, he can beat the drum. The drum is getting enlightened, but not Nivedano, or something like that. And then Nivedano told me later that the following day, of course, he prepares his kit, before the disco, and this drum didn't want to be played. She was now enlightened, And actually the photo, which is in the book of that discourse, it's another drum, because I took the photographs the next day. It's a metal sort of same size, but it's not that drum. And so eventually Osho left his body, and I really felt like I wanted to have something from Osho. And so then Nivedano, I gave something else instead. And so he gave me this drum. And then for a while I used to play it in heart dance here and there. And then I realized that the drum was actually quite happy not to be played. Like she's she's happy, because sometimes I would talk and say, I'm sorry, like I don't have much opportunity to play you. And she said, oh, fine, I just sit here. And so that's, I don't know what she's doing now in Greece. Maybe I will write to Amlas and see how she's doing.
Ask her to have a photo
yeah.
of this drum so we can publish.
I have a photo. Yeah.
Okay.
I can send you, but I can ask her also. So that was a nice story of the enlightened drum, because Osho was saying, because she's empty, her sound comes from her emptiness.
I like the way you say surdo, to talk about the surdo as a female.
Oh, yeah, she's a small one. I also used to play the big one. We used to do something like Oshoba, and then Amlas was also playing. We were playing together, ding dong, ding dong. And there was a big one also there. I really like that. Yeah.
Great.
About music, to play kind of percussion or any of rhythm, I always feel like you have to play with your bum. you know, the bum. You
Ah,
play.
the bum.
You are
Okay.
in your bum. That's where the. It's not here or there, or it's in your bum.
Yes.
That's where the rhythm is.
Ah,
You play with your bum.
Perfect.
That's nice. That's nice.
In Italian, col culo.
Con il culo.
Culo.
Here in Brazil, com a bunda.
Bunga.
In
Bunda.
Japan is shiri.
Shiri.
Shiri. So, Punya, I think we are getting to
Close.
close our interview. Beautiful one. I think we could go on forever with you. We used to ask people the last question.
If you could say one word for Osho, what is it?
So to him, I would say thank you.
No.
Gratitude. Yeah, that's.
Mm. Thank you, beloved.
Thank you. That was fun.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ciao. Thank you.
Ciao, Osho.
Osho, querida.
How
Yay.
beautiful this was. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so good at it. You're so good at it.
We do our best, yeah?
Yeah,
With our hearts.
you're perfect.
I think Divya is frozen on the
Is she?
Osho. So goodbye.
Ciao.
Thank you so
Ciao,
much.
Vero. Ciao.
Ciao.